The night was quiet at Pete's gas station, just like any other night in this remote corner of Montana. Tom Miller wiped his greasy hands on an old rag as he finished fixing yet another broken-down truck. At 42, he had spent most of his life fixing things that others couldn't or wouldn't bother to fix. The night shift suited him well. Fewer people meant more peace to work with his beloved machines. The clock on the wall showed 2:15 a.m. when everything changed. First came the light, bright and blue, streaking across the star-filled sky. Then came the sound, not the roar of a plane or the rumble of thunder, but a high-pitched whine that made Tom's teeth hurt. "That ain't normal," he muttered, stepping out of his workshop. The light disappeared behind the tree line of the nearby forest, followed by a crash that shook the ground. A few seconds later, an orange glow flickered between the trees. Tom hesitated. The smart thing would be to call the police or maybe even the military. But something in his gut told him to check it out first. He grabbed his trusty toolbox and flashlight, then headed toward the forest in his old pickup truck. The dirt road ended half a mile in, forcing Tom to continue on foot. The orange glow grew stronger as he approached, and a sharp, unfamiliar smell filled the air, like burning metal mixed with something sweet. Through the trees, he could see something large and shiny. Definitely not a fallen plane or satellite. "Hello," he called out, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "Anyone hurt out there?" No answer came, but he heard a faint sound, like someone trying to breathe through pain. Tom pushed through the undergrowth and stopped dead in his tracks. Before him lay what could only be described as a spaceship, about the size of a small bus. Its silver surface gleamed despite the dirt and damage, and strange symbols glowed faintly along its side. A section of the ship's hull had cracked open, revealing the dimly lit interior. Tom approached carefully, his flashlight beam revealing no signs of danger. The breathing sound grew louder. "I'm coming in to help," he announced, not sure if whatever was inside could understand him. "Don't be afraid." Inside, the air felt thick and warm. Tom's flashlight revealed a small room filled with blinking lights and screens showing symbols he couldn't understand. But what caught his attention was the figure slumped in what looked like a pilot's seat. At first glance, the person looked almost human. 2 arms, 2 legs, a head with 2 eyes. But the skin had a slight bluish tint, and the clothes. Tom had never seen anything like them. They reminded him of pictures he'd seen of royal robes, all flowing and decorated with strange patterns that seemed to move in his flashlight beam. The figure stirred and opened its eyes, brilliant purple eyes that locked onto Tom's face. Despite the alien appearance, Tom could read the pain and fear in those eyes clear as day. "Take it easy," he said softly, the way he talked to scared animals he sometimes found hurt on the road. "I'm here to help." The alien tried to move and winced. Tom could see why. A piece of the ship's interior had come loose and pinned their leg. It wasn't a big piece, but it looked heavy. Without hesitation, Tom set down his flashlight and gripped the metal piece. "This might hurt a bit," he warned, then lifted with all his strength. The alien pulled their leg free, making a sound between a gasp and a whistle. Tom knew he should be terrified. He should be running away, calling the authorities, doing anything but what he was doing. But as he looked at the injured being before him, all he could think was that someone needed his help, and Tom Miller had never turned away from someone who needed help, no matter who or what they were. The alien's eyes hadn't left his face. Slowly, they raised a hand and touched their chest, making a series of musical sounds that Tom couldn't hope to understand. But the meaning was clear enough. They were trying to communicate. "I'm Tom," he said, pointing to himself, "and I'm going to help you. Don't you worry about that." Tom watched in amazement as the alien pulled out a small device from their robes. The device projected a soft blue light, and suddenly he could understand their words. "I am Princess Edda," the alien said, her voice sounding like gentle wind chimes through the translator. "And you have saved my life, kind human." Tom blinked, trying to process what he had just heard. Princess, he asked, looking at her damaged ship. You're running from something, aren't you? Ada's purple eyes darkened with worry. Yes. My home. My world has fallen. The royal guards, they turned against us. My father, the king, told me to escape. She touched a medallion at her throat. They will come looking for me. Why? Tom asked, already checking the ship's damage with his flashlight. The crash had torn open several panels, exposing strange machinery underneath. They want this. Ada held up her medallion. It contains the codes to our world's defense systems. Without it, the traitors cannot take full control. She tried to stand but stumbled. I must repair my ship and leave before they track me here. Tom caught her before she fell. You're hurt. And this ship, he gestured at the damage. It needs serious work. I'm a mechanic. I might be able to help. But first we need to get you somewhere safe. Ada looked at him with surprise. You would risk yourself to help me. You don't even know me. Maybe not, Tom said, gathering his tools. But I know the difference between right and wrong. And leaving someone in trouble just ain't right. They made their way slowly to Tom's pickup truck. As he helped Ada into the passenger seat, she stared at everything with curious eyes. Your vehicle, she said. It's so simple. On my world, we haven't used mechanical engines in centuries. Everything is automated, run by artificial intelligence. Tom started the engine. Sometimes simple is better. Simpler things are easier to fix when they break down. As they drove back to the gas station, Ada explained more. Her people had become so dependent on advanced technology that most had forgotten how to repair even basic machinery. The royal engineers who maintained their systems had been the first to join the rebellion. That's why they sabotaged my ship, she said, looking out at the dark forest. They knew I couldn't fix it myself. No one in the royal family can. We're taught to command machines, not repair them. Tom parked behind his workshop, where no passing cars could see them. Well, you're lucky you crashed near a mechanic then. Even if your ship's different, machines are machines. They all follow the same basic rules. Inside the workshop, Tom cleared a space behind some old shelves, making the hidden area where Ada could rest. He brought out a first aid kit and some blankets he kept for emergencies. I don't understand, Ada said as he checked her injured leg. Your world has such basic technology, yet you offer help without hesitation. On my world, people wouldn't help a stranger without checking their social status and calculating potential benefits. Tom cleaned and bandaged her leg, thinking about her words. That's the problem with getting too comfortable with machines doing everything, he said finally. You forget how to be human, or whatever you call it on your world. Sometimes helping others isn't about what you get back. It's just the right thing to do. Ada touched her medallion again, her eyes distant. The rebels said the royal family had lost touch with reality, that we didn't understand real life anymore. She looked at Tom's grease-stained hands. Perhaps they were right about some things. Getting out of touch is easy, Tom said, standing up. But getting back in touch, that's something we can work on. First, let's take a look at that ship of yours. You teach me about your technology, and I'll teach you about good old-fashioned mechanics. Deal. For the first time since he'd found her, Ada smiled. Deal. The sound of engines woke Tom just before dawn. Not the familiar rumble of trucks on the highway, but a high-pitched whine that made his skin crawl. He had heard that sound before, when Ada's ship crashed. They're here, Ada whispered from her hiding place behind the shelves. Her purple eyes glowed with fear in the darkness. Tom moved quickly to the workshop window. 3 shapes darker than the night sky dropped from above, landing in the forest where Ada's ship had crashed. Each one was bigger than Ada's small craft, with sharp edges that reminded Tom of hunting knives. Those your friends? Tom asked, though he already knew the answer. The Royal Guard's elite hunters, Ada said, clutching her medallion. They track by technology signatures. My ship's energy core will lead them straight to us. Tom grabbed his old backpack and started filling it with tools. Then we better not be here when they arrive. I know a place, but we need to move fast. He led Ada to his truck, keeping to the shadows. The old engine coughed to life, and Tom winced at the sound. But sometimes, he thought, being primitive had its advantages. The hunters would be looking for advanced technology, not an old pickup truck. They drove away from the gas station just as the first rays of sunlight touched the mountains. In his mirror, Tom saw 3 figures in sleek armor emerge from the forest. They moved with an unnatural grace, scanning the area with devices that looked like silver spiders. "Where are we going?" Ada asked, watching the hunters disappear behind them. "Old mining tunnels," Tom replied, turning onto a dirt road. "Used to play in them as a kid. They're lined with iron ore, might help hide us from their scanners." The road got rougher as they climbed into the hills. Tom's truck bounced and rattled, but kept going. He had maintained this engine himself for 15 years. It wouldn't fail him now. After 20 minutes, Tom stopped near what looked like an ordinary rock face. "We'll have to walk from here," he said, grabbing his backpack. "The entrance is hidden behind those bushes." Inside the tunnel, the air was cool and damp. Tom's flashlight showed old support beams and rusty rail tracks leading deeper into the mountain. Ada looked around with curiosity. "These tunnels," she said, "they were dug by human hands. Mostly machines, but yeah, human-operated ones." Tom led her deeper into the tunnel. People worked hard to get at the ore. Lot of history in these walls. They reached a small chamber where several tunnels met. Old mining equipment lay scattered around, covered in decades of dust. Tom set down his backpack and pulled out some battery-powered lanterns. "My grandfather worked these mines," he said, setting up the lights. "Taught me that anything made by hands can be understood by hands. That's why I became a mechanic." Suddenly, Ada's translator device beeped. She pulled it out, her face pale in the lantern light. "They're scanning the area. The hunters have technology that can see through solid rock." Tom smiled. "Maybe. But can they see through this?" He picked up a piece of iron ore. "Whole mountains full of metal. Creates interference. That's why the mining company's radios never worked right down here." As if to prove his point, Ada's translator crackled with static. She looked at the rocky walls with new understanding. "Simple solutions," she said softly. "We rely so much on advanced technology, we forget about basic physical properties." "Exactly," Tom said, setting up a small camping stove he packed. "Sometimes the old ways work best. Now let's get some rest. We'll need clear heads to figure out our next move." They sat in the dim light of the lanterns, listening to water drip somewhere in the darkness. Above them, unseen, the hunters' ships circled the mountains, their advanced sensors confused by the simple geology of Earth's rocks. As hours passed in the mining tunnel, Tom and Ada sat near the camping stove, sharing stories of their worlds. The lantern light cast dancing shadows on the rocky walls around them. "So your people never cooked their own food?" Tom asked, stirring a pot of canned soup he'd brought in his backpack. Ada watched the steam rise with fascination. "Everything is prepared by automated systems. The royal kitchen has machines that can create any dish instantly." She paused, accepting a warm bowl from Tom. "But this feels different. Special." "That's because someone made it," Tom said, sitting back against a rocky wall. "Things mean more when there's effort behind them." Ada took a careful sip of the soup. "Tell me about your world, Tom. How do humans live without advanced AI and automated systems?" Tom thought for a moment. "We work. We learn. We help each other. Sure, we have computers and machines, but we try to understand them, not just use them." He pulled out some tools from his backpack. "Take this wrench, for example. It's not smart, but in the right hands, it can fix almost anything." "On my world," Ada said quietly, "children are taught to command machines from birth, but not how they work. When something breaks." She touched her translator device. We replace it. We never repair. Tom nodded. That's the difference between knowing how to use something and understanding it. He spread out his tools on a cloth. Speaking of repairs, tell me more about your ship's systems. If we're going to fix it, I need to understand how it works. Ada's eyes widened. You still want to help repair my ship, even with the hunters searching for us? Of course. Can't hide in these tunnels forever. Tom picked up a pencil and some paper from his backpack. Draw it for me. Show me how the parts connect. For the next hour, Ada drew diagrams of her ship's systems while Tom asked questions. Despite the advanced technology, the basic principles weren't so different from the engines he worked on every day. See here, Tom pointed to part of her drawing. This is like a fuel injection system, just more advanced. And this, he traced another line. It's a cooling system, isn't it? Ada stared at him in surprise. Yes, but how did you know? Engines are engines, Tom shrugged. Whether they burn gasoline or whatever your ship uses, they all need fuel, cooling, and exhaust. The basics don't change. The basics, Ada repeated thoughtfully. We've forgotten them. Our machines do everything automatically. But when they fail, she looked at Tom's tools. We're helpless. Tom started packing up his tools. Not helpless, just out of practice. Anyone can learn if they're willing to try. Will you teach me? Ada asked suddenly. How to use tools, how to understand machines. Tom smiled. Sure, but first we need parts to repair your ship. I have an idea, but it's risky. There's an old junkyard about 10 miles from here. Lots of metal we could use. But the hunters, they're looking for advanced technology, Tom said. Not two people in an old truck visiting a junkyard. Sometimes the best hiding place is in plain sight. Ada touched her medallion, thinking, my people would never think to look in such a place. They'd consider it beneath them. That's their weakness, Tom said, standing up. They'd forgotten that valuable things can be found in simple places. He offered Ada his hand, ready to learn some basic mechanics. Ada took his hand, smiling. Yes, it's time I understood how things really work. Outside the mountain, the hunter ships still circled, their advanced sensors searching for technology that matched their own. But in the tunnel below, two beings from different worlds were learning that understanding was more valuable than advancement. The morning sun had barely touched the junkyard when everything went wrong. Tom and Ada had spent an hour collecting useful parts, old radiators, copper wire, and aluminum sheets that Tom thought they could use to repair her ship. Then they heard it, the distinctive whine of the hunter's engines. They found us, Ada whispered, dropping the metal sheet she was holding. Her translator device beeped rapidly, warning of approaching energy signatures. Tom grabbed her hand. Quick, behind that old school bus. They ducked behind the rusty yellow vehicle just as three dark shapes descended from the sky. The hunter's ships hovered above the junkyard, their scanning beams sweeping the ground. Your medallion, Tom whispered. Can they track it? Ada clutched the royal device. Yes, but it's protected. They can only detect it within 50 feet. Tom looked around the junkyard, his mind racing. Piles of old cars, machinery, and metal scraps surrounded them. To most people, it was just trash. To Tom, it was an arsenal. I have an idea, he said, pulling out his wrench. But you'll have to trust me. The hunters landed their ships, their armored forms stepping out with weapons ready. Their helmets turned slowly, scanning the area. One spoke in a language Tom couldn't understand, but Ada's eyes widened. They're going to search every piece of metal here, she translated. They know we're close. Tom nodded toward an old crane at the far end of the junkyard. See that? We're going to use their technology against them. He quickly explained his plan. Ada stared at him. That's so simple it might work. They crawled between the rows of junked cars as the hunters spread out. Tom could hear their heavy footsteps and the hum of their scanning devices. He and Ada reached the crane's control cabin unseen. Now, Tom whispered, Remember what I taught you about mechanical systems? Ada nodded, her hands shaking slightly as she gripped the old control lever. Simple machines, pulleys and gears. No computers needed. Exactly. Wait for my signal. Tom slipped out of the cabin and moved toward the nearest pile of cars. The hunters were getting closer, their scanners beeping more frequently as they neared Ada's position. Taking a deep breath, Tom threw a wrench at an old car's hood. The clang echoed through the junkyard. All three hunters turned toward the sound, their weapons raised. That's when Tom hit the old car's horn. The sudden blare startled the hunters, making their sensitive scanning equipment screech with feedback. They staggered, disoriented by the noise. Now, Tom shouted. Ada pulled the crane's lever. The ancient machine groaned to life, its electromagnet swinging out over the hunters. Tom had connected it to a car battery while collecting parts, just enough power for one good pull. The hunters' metallic armor betrayed them. The electromagnet yanked them off their feet, their advanced weapons and scanning devices stuck helplessly to its surface. Hold it steady. Tom ran to their ships, climbing inside the nearest one. Just as Ada had drawn in her diagrams, he found the power core and yanked it free. The ship's systems died instantly. The hunters struggled against the electromagnet, but their armor, designed to protect against energy weapons and high-tech attacks, worked against them. They couldn't break free from the simple magnetic force. Tom. Ada called out. The battery's dying. Perfect timing, he said, running back to her. Their ships are useless now. And these old junkers. He patted a rusty car door. They'll make great camouflage while we finish fixing your ship. Ada looked at the hunters, still stuck to the electromagnet as its power faded. They never expected to be defeated by such simple technology. That's the thing about getting too advanced, Tom said, gathering their collected parts. Sometimes you forget that the simplest solution is often the best one. They hurried away from the junkyard as the electromagnet finally lost power, leaving three very confused and embarrassed hunters to deal with their dead ships and damaged equipment. Back at Ada's crashed ship, Tom spread out their collected junkyard parts on the forest floor. The morning sun filtered through the trees, glinting off pieces of metal that most people would call trash. But Tom saw potential in every rusty part. Your ship's main problem is the damaged cooling system, he explained, holding up an old radiator. We can use this to replace it. It's not as advanced as your original one, but it'll work. Ada watched in fascination as Tom began to work. He had taught her the basics of tools over the past days, and now she held a wrench confidently in her blue-tinted hands. Hand me that copper wire, Tom said, pointing. We'll need it to connect the power core. As they worked, Tom's radio crackled with emergency broadcasts. More hunter ships had been spotted in the area. They were running out of time. They're calling for reinforcements, Ada said, her voice tight with worry. The entire Royal Guard could be here soon. Tom wiped sweat from his forehead, leaving a streak of grease. Then we better work faster. Remember what I taught you about circuit connections? Ada nodded, already stripping the insulation from a wire. Connect positive to positive, negative to negative, just like in your truck's battery. Exactly. Your people might have forgotten the basics, but they still apply, even to advanced technology. They worked through the morning, replacing damaged parts with their junkyard finds. Tom had to modify most pieces to fit, but that's what being a mechanic was all about, making things work with what you had. Look at this, he said, showing Ada how he'd modified a car's fuel pump to work with her ship's systems. It's not pretty, but it'll hold. Suddenly, they heard the familiar whine of hunter ships. Lots of them. The reinforcements had arrived. We need more time, Tom said, looking at their half-finished repairs. Ada, remember how we confused their scanners in the junkyard? She nodded, then her purple eyes widened with understanding. The metal. But we don't have an electromagnet here. No, Tom grinned, but we have something better. He pulled out several small motors they'd salvaged from the junkyard. Help me set these up around the ship. Together, they placed the motors in a circle, connecting them to car batteries. Tom explained his plan as they worked. These motors will create magnetic fields, he said, connecting wires. Not strong enough to pull their ships down, but strong enough to confuse their scanning equipment. Ada finished, excitement in her voice, just like the iron ore in the mountain. And when the fields overlap, Tom connected the last wire. They'll create interference patterns. Your people may have forgotten about basic electronics, but these old laws of physics still work. They finished just as the first hunter ships appeared overhead. But instead of finding them immediately, the ships began flying in confused patterns, their sensors giving false readings. It's working, Ada exclaimed. Their advanced tracking systems can't handle the overlapping magnetic fields. Tom was already back at the ship, working faster now. This buys us time, but we need to finish these repairs. As the hunters searched blindly overhead, Ada worked alongside Tom, her royal hands now covered in grease and oil. She understood now why her people had gone wrong. They had lost touch with the physical world, forgotten the satisfaction of fixing things themselves. Tom, she said, connecting the last wire as he taught her, my people could learn so much from humans. Everyone can learn, he replied, closing the ship's access panel. They just need to be willing to get their hands dirty. The ship's systems hummed to life, its lights glowing not with their original pure white, but with a warmer, earthly tone, a reflection of its hybrid human-alien repairs. Above them, the hunters continued their frustrated search, defeated not by superior technology, but by simple motors and basic physics, a truly human solution to an alien problem. The repaired ship hummed with a strange but steady rhythm, part alien technology, part Earth mechanics. Ada stood at its entrance, looking at Tom in the pre-dawn light. Behind them, the confused hunter ships still circled, their sensors scrambled by Tom's simple magnetic field generators. My loyal supporters will be waiting at these coordinates, Ada said, showing Tom a holographic map. They've secured a safe base on our colony world. From there, we can start fighting back against the traitors. Tom nodded, checking the ship's hybrid systems one last time. The junkyard parts weren't pretty, but they worked. Sometimes, that's all that mattered. You're sure this will fly? He asked, tightening a final bolt. Ada smiled, touching the ship's hull. It's better than before. Not because it's more advanced, but because now I understand how it works. She looked at her hands, still stained with grease. You've taught me more than just repairs, Tom. The sound of more hunter ships approaching echoed in the distance. Their time was running out. You better get going, Tom said, stepping back from the ship. Those magnetic fields won't fool them forever. But Ada didn't move toward the ship. Instead, she reached for her medallion, the royal device that contained her world's defense codes. Come with me, she said suddenly. My people need teachers like you. We've lost touch with real knowledge, with understanding how things work. You could help us remember. Tom looked around at his workshop, his tools, his simple but meaningful life. That's kind you to offer, but, he smiled, my place is here. There are still plenty of broken-down trucks that need fixing. Ada nodded, understanding. Then she did something unexpected. She took off her medallion and held it up. The device glowed, projecting a hologram of Earth. Then, as Princess of the Star Kingdom, I declare Earth under my protection. Her voice carried the authority of royalty, but her eyes held the warmth of friendship. When I reclaim my throne, I will establish a special academy in your honor, Tom. A place where my people can learn to understand technology, not just use it. She pressed a few buttons on her translator device, then handed it to Tom. Keep this. I've modified it to work with Earth technology. If you ever need to reach me, or if Earth ever needs our help, you can use it. That's quite a gift, Tom said, carefully taking the device. Not as great as the gift you gave me, Ada replied. You showed me that true advancement isn't about having the most sophisticated technology. It's about understanding what you have and using it wisely. The hunter ships were getting closer now. Etta quickly hugged Tom, then stepped into her ship. The hybrid systems came to life smoothly, Earth-made parts working in perfect harmony with alien technology. As the ship rose into the dawn sky, Tom saw the hunters finally breaking through his magnetic interference, but they were too late. Ada's ship shot upward, disappearing into the clouds with a flash of light. 10 years later, Tom still worked at his gas station, fixing trucks and helping stranded travelers. But now he had a new sign outside his workshop that read, Miller's Mechanics and Engineering Academy. Twice a week, he taught classes to eager students about understanding machines, not just using them. And sometimes, on clear nights, he would take out Ada's translator and exchange messages with her. She had reclaimed her throne, and true to her word, had established the Earth Understanding Academy on her homeworld. The Academy's motto, displayed in both human and alien script, read, "Knowledge isn't about having the most advanced tools, it's about understanding the ones you have." And every year, on the anniversary of their meeting, a ship would land behind Tom's workshop. Its design was a perfect blend of advanced alien technology and simple Earth engineering, just like the friendship between a humble mechanic and an alien princess who learned that the greatest wisdom often comes from the simplest things.